Listen closely because the window for preparation is closing faster than the blast doors on a Cold War bunker. And what you are seeing on the news regarding January 2026 is not just geopolitical maneuvering, but the starting gun for a total systems collapse that will arrive at your doorstep within days, not weeks. The violent end of the post-Cold War order and the shift to naked resource conquest described in the Janus Moment Intelligence Report is the definitive signal that the era of stability is dead, and we are entering a without rule of law scenario where international norms are replaced by kinetic decapitation, strikes, and zero-sum resource wars that will shatter the global supply chain you depend on for your very survival. The United States government executing Operation Absolute Resolve to seize Venezuelan oil is not a distant military adventure, but a desperate attempt to secure the heavy, crude essential for our refining infrastructure, which means the domestic fuel supply is currently hanging by a thread. And you need to understand that the U.S. refining complex in the Gulf Coast is chemically addicted to heavy sour crude to produce diesel. And if that feedstock is interrupted by the chaos of this intervention or the retaliatory blockade of tankers like the Bella One, you are looking at a nationwide diesel shortage that will stop the trucking industry in its tracks. You must realize that the grocery stores operate on a just-in-time delivery system with only 3 days of inventory on the shelves. And when the diesel stops, the trucks stop. And when the trucks stop, the food riots begin within 72 hours. So your immediate priority is to secure a minimum of 3 months of shelf-stable calories, including rice beans and canned meats, because the inflation shock mentioned in the report is going to make money meaningless and food the only currency that matters. The administration's plan to crash oil prices to $50 a barrel might sound good for your wallet, but it creates a paradox that will bankrupt the U.S. shale industry, leading to mass unemployment and economic devastation in energy-producing states, which will trigger civil unrest and a spike in crime as desperation sets in. So you need to harden your home security now by reinforcing door frames, installing security film on windows, and establishing a neighborhood watch, because the police will be overwhelmed and unable to respond to looting. The report details the Russian use of the Orishnik hypersonic missile against Lviv, and you need to understand that this weapon travels at Mach 10 and renders NATO air defense shields obsolete, which means the illusion of safety provided by the Atlantic Ocean is gone, and a strike on the U.S. homeland is now a technical possibility against which we have no defense. The Oreshnik strike proves that critical infrastructure is vulnerable to decapitation with zero warning, so you must prepare for a grid-down scenario where the electrical grid is taken out either by kinetic strikes or the cyber warfare that accompanies them, and when the power goes out, the municipal water pumps fail, which means your taps will run dry and sewage will back up into your home, exposing you to cholera and dysentery. You need to store at least 1 gallon of water per person per day and invest in high-quality water filtration systems like Life Straws or Berkey filters, and stockpile pool shock to treat bulk water, because in a grid-down city, water is life, and lack of sanitation is the primary killer. The report mentions the use of dummy warheads to demonstrate escalation dominance, which is a psychological warfare tactic designed to induce panic and paralysis. So you must maintain your mental discipline and refuse to succumb to the normalcy bias that tells you the government will fix it because the government is the one breaking it. The frantic scramble for rare earth elements in Greenland is the final nail in the coffin of the global tech supply chain, and the U.S. move to annex the island signifies that the flow of components for electronics and high-tech gear is about to be severed by a conflict with China. This means that the smartphone in your pocket and the computer in your car are irreplaceable assets, and you need to shift your mindset to a repair culture where you preserve and maintain every piece of technology you own, because new inventory will simply not exist. You need to acquire analog backups for essential information, including paper maps of your local area and a ham radio for communication, because when the cellular networks are jammed or destroyed by the electronic warfare mentioned in the report, you will be deaf and blind without independent comms. The report highlights the weaponization of energy markets and the exposure of Western defense vulnerabilities, which translates to a hyperinflationary environment where the cost of heating your home and fueling your vehicle will skyrocket. So you need to secure alternative heating sources like wood stoves or kerosene heaters, and stockpiles fuel immediately before rationing protocols are implemented. The seizure of the Russian tanker and the blockade in the Caribbean increases the risk of naval confrontation, which could shut down global shipping lanes, leading to a total unavailability of imported medications. So you must prioritize stockpiling prescription drugs, antibiotics, and insulin, because the pharmaceutical supply chain is incredibly fragile and relies on petrochemical precursors that are now at the center of a global war. The domestic economy is shifting to a war footing, where civilian needs are secondary to military necessity, and you need to liquidate unessential assets and convert your wealth into tangible goods like silver, ammunition, and medical supplies that will retain value when the dollar collapses or is digitized into a control mechanism. The civil unrest predicted by the economic crash will not be limited to the inner cities, but will spill out into the suburbs as the golden horde of unprepared refugees flees the urban centers in search of food and safety. So you must have a bug-out plan and a predetermined location to retreat to if your primary residence becomes untenable. The report's mention of lawfare by force in Venezuela and the Trump doctrine in Greenland indicates that property rights and legal norms are being suspended in favor of raw power, and this ethos will trickle down to the street level, meaning you must be prepared to defend your life and property with lethal force if necessary, because 911 will not pick up and the rule of law will be temporarily suspended in many areas. The capture of Maduro and the subsequent power vacuum creates a model for regime change that creates chaos rather than stability, and you should expect similar political instability domestically as factions vie for control in a crumbling economy. You need to build a community of like-minded individuals because the lone wolf dies in these scenarios, and your survival depends on a team that brings together diverse skills like medical training, tactical defense, and mechanical repair. The report confirms we are in the Janus moment, looking back at a lost stability and forward to a conflict defined by naked interest. So stop looking back and start preparing for the naked aggression that is coming for your resources. Buy iodine tablets to protect your thyroid in case the nuclear signaling described in the report escalates to a tactical exchange, because the Oreshnik system is nuclear capable and the threshold for use has been lowered. Secure a backup power source like a solar generator or a dual-fuel generator, and enough stabilized gasoline to run it for critical intervals to keep freezers running and communications active. Understand that the banning of Taiwanese officials by China is a precursor to a blockade of the island, which produces the majority of the world's advanced semiconductors. So if you need electronics, buy them today, because tomorrow they will be unobtainium. The entire geopolitical chessboard has been upended, and the shock waves will hit your local gas station, your local pharmacy, and your local bank simultaneously. So you must act with speed and decisiveness to insulate your family from the cascading failure of the systems you once trusted. This is not a drill, and this is not a theoretical exercise. This is a warning that the mechanisms of your daily life are being dismantled by great power competition, and you are on your own. Stockpile food, secure water, harden your shelter, arm yourself, and build your tribe, because the Janus moment is here, and the only thing that matters now is your ability to survive the violent birth of this new world order.